Hey guys, welcome back to Wrestle News 365 here. And in the bit of the negativity going around the dark days, let's talk a little bit about professional wrestling. Let's try and raise everyone's spirits. Today we're going to talk a little bit about Luke Harper, or Brodie Lee as he's now known, post WWE, and if he is indeed the Exalted One of the Dark Order in AEW. Now, to give a little background to this, we're not going to actually mention you-know-what. We're just going to call it you-know-what at this point. I think everyone's tired of talking about it, tired of hearing about it. But AEW Dynamite was due to be taking place from Rochester, New York next week for next week's show, the show prior to Blood and Guts, which has also been postponed. However, due to you-know-what, the show has been postponed, and instead, we're not going to have no show at all. We're going to instead have an AEW Dynamite from Daly's Place in Jacksonville, Florida, which is, of course, the home of the Khans and owned by the Khans. We've had a couple of shows for AEW from Daly's Place. We had the New Year's Day Dynamite show, the Homecoming show, they called it. We also had, was it Fight Fest or Fight for the Fallen? There, Fight for the Fallen was there, wasn't it? Yeah, last year. So they've had a couple of shows from Daly's Place in Jacksonville, Florida. So instead of being in Rochester, New York, because public gatherings of over, I believe, was it 500 or 300 people are banned or postponed for the time being. Instead, we're going to have Dynamite from Daly's Place in Jacksonville, Florida. I'm not sure at this point if we're going to have a full crowd there. I know for tonight, as of recording this, we're recording this on a Friday. Friday Night SmackDown tonight is going to be taking place from the WWE Performance Center, whereby there's going to be no crowd. There's going to only be essential personnel at the show. I don't know if that's the case for Dynamite next week. From what I've seen online, it looks like there is going to be a crowd. They're going to have limited people in, but they are going to have a crowd. I know there are regulations about how far people can be seated from each other, and like I said, gatherings of more than a certain amount of people. So they might have it where if they've got gatherings of over 500 people are banned, maybe it's gathering, they're going to have like 400 people in attendance for the show. I don't know. It will certainly be interesting to see, and I know Sean Ross Sapp, he did a really good tweet. It was really quite poignant, actually. He mentioned on Twitter that, these shows, whether they are AEW or whether they are WWE, they're going to be shows that are featured in documentaries and flashbacks for time to come, because it really is an unprecedented time. We really don't know what to expect. And like I said, the show is meant to be taking place from Jacksonville, Florida next week. AEW have said the show is going to take place. Everything's very fluid when it comes to mass gatherings at the moment, so that it still could be cancelled. But if the show does go ahead, it was announced last week on Dynamite that the Exalted One of the Dark Order, the Dark Order's mystery leader that they've been talking about for months and months and months at this point, will be revealed next week on Dynamite. Now, I'm assuming due to the change of location that the plans for the reveal itself won't change, and we will see the reveal this week of the Exalted One of the Dark Order. Now, some people are speculating that the Exalted One could be Luke Harper, aka Brodie Lee. Now, why is that? Now, the show was originally, like I said, scheduled to take place in Rochester, New York, which is just so happens to be the hometown of Brodie Lee, and many have speculated that the former Luke Harper will be revealed as the Exalted One, because it makes sense that AEW decides to reveal the Dark Order's leader in his hometown. It would have got the best reaction possible. It would have been certainly a moment that AEW can flash back to a million times over the years after this. So that shifted a lot of people's opinion. It was up in the air whether people thought, well, is it going to be Matt Hardy? Is it going to be Brodie Lee? Is it going to be someone else? Could it be a Swerve? Could it be Christopher Daniels? Could it be Hangman Adam Page? Who could it be? But once the announcement came up that it said the Dark Order Exalted One is going to be revealed next week from Rochester, New York, a lot of people said, okay, that Brodie Lee bow certainly did start to ring in many people's heads. That was definitely pointing that Brodie Lee could be the Exalted One. Now, in terms of the legality point of view, Brodie Lee, Luke Harper at the time, was released by WWE at the end of 2019. But his contract was a strange one. Now, he requested his release way earlier on in the year, but WWE refused to release him. They've been doing that for lots of talents now. They're more than happy because of the likes of AEW, because of other promotions springing up and having more of a financial backing. they're more than happy to let their talents just see out the rest of their contract. Brodie Lee wanted to get out of his contract. WWE initially said no. They, in fact, added more time on since Brodie Lee had been out with a wrist injury or a hand injury, whilst his partner Eric Rowan at the time got bicep surgery for a torn bicep. So they added more time onto his contract. Now, he made a couple of extra appearances for WWE in September, October, and November of last year, teaming once again with Eric Rowan. He reappeared at Night of Clash of Champions last year, had a match against Roman Reigns and Daniel Bryan at Hell in a Cell, and then made his final appearance at Crown Jewel last year. But then eventually he did get his release, but his non-compete clause, if you do get released from your WWE contract, they have a non-compete clause, which is usually 90 days, expired in March, which would have been the time that his contract expired anyway. So it was kind of the same way. You can leave now, but you still can't compete anyway till March. But now he's free and clear. He's free and clear to appear and sign for whoever he pleases, appear wherever he would like, and go to any professional wrestling company that is available to him. So I think at this point, it's a dead cert, isn't it, that Brodie Lee is going to sign for AEW. I think that's a given at this point. But the major question will be, what will be his role in AEW going forward? Will he be just a singles competitor, or will he in fact be the Exalted One himself? Now, they can certainly tell a story without referencing his previous WWE gimmick that he was always a follower and now he is a leader. Now, obviously in WWE, as Luke Harper, he was a member of the Wyatt family under the tutelage of Bray Wyatt and partnering Eric Rowan in that faction and Braun Strowman for a period of time. And that whole Wyatt family is a playoff of the Manson family name, isn't it? And it's all meant to be a cult-like faction with this cult of personality leader in Bray Wyatt, or that character that he was doing at the time. And the Dark Order is actually a very similar faction. The Dark Order has been played up as a cult, as this cult-like faction, recruiting people to better themselves, but actually serve the purpose of the Exalted One, or serve the likes of Evil Uno and Stu Grayson. So they're very similar factions, so definitely Brodie Lee could follow into that, and then they could definitely tell the story of, well, I was once a follower, but now I am the leader. I know how things should be run. And perhaps Brodie Lee is the perfect person to lead a cult. If he was a previous follower of one, he knows how those sort of things work. Now, in my opinion, I'm not sure if Brodie Lee is the best person to lead the Dark Order in terms of his ability on the mic, but in terms of the character, he's in fitting with this whole dark cult vibe that they're definitely trying to portray in terms of the Dark Order. Brodie Lee has always been this wide-eyed, hypnotic character, and that's kind of where the Dark Order is going for. They're definitely going for that kind of vibe. But for me, I do question if someone who is the leader of a faction like that, they need to be a good mouthpiece, especially in a cult-like faction. They need to be able to go on these large diatribes, try and convince people, persuade people to join their faction. And we haven't heard a lot of Brodie Lee on the mic. We didn't hear a lot of it in WWE because Bray Wyatt was the mouthpiece of that faction, and rightfully so. But I just don't know if that's up there with Brodie Lee's ability. Now, I could be wrong with that one. Brodie Lee could certainly prove us wrong with the ability on the mic. But I think, in my opinion, I think that Matt Hardy would just be a better fit as the leader of that group. As, like I said, I think the leader of a faction should be solid on the mic, and this group's character is so out there that a great character performer like a Matt Hardy, who is proven on the microphone, whether it's be, with Broken Matt or Woken Matt, and can certainly really get into the character, really engross himself into the character, is something that a stable like the Dark Order would need, and I think it would be a better fit, in my opinion. Now, Matt Hardy himself did say he would make a decision about his career in the next 30 days, so it's still possible that Matt Hardy could be revealed as the Exalted One next Wednesday night. Regardless of if it was in Rochester, New York or Jacksonville, Florida, Matt Hardy may have always been the plan. We've seen the likes of the Young Bucks appear in the Free to Delete series with Matt Hardy. They're telling the story about Zenith being taken out of his body and he's currently buried. Maybe they'll transfer that over to Dynamite. We don't know. But with the show originally emanating from Rochester, New York, it's now, I think, looking more and more likely that Brodie Lee would be revealed as the Exalted One. And I don't expect that to change, even if the show has been moved to Jacksonville, Florida. Personally, like I said, I would prefer to have Brodie Lee on his own. But if this Brodie Lee character version as the Exalted One leads to Brodie Lee being pushed to the top of the card where he belongs, he belonged there in WWE and he would certainly belong there in AEW, then I'm all for it. I want to see Brodie Lee be successful. I want to see him be used properly. I want to see Brodie Lee be involved in the World Championship picture. I think he has that potential. I'm just not sure the fit of his mic skills is necessarily the best fit with the Dark Order, but I could be wrong. And of course, we could see someone else. But at this point, I think it's very, very likely that it will be Brodie Lee or Matt Hardy. So I would say out of those two, I'm probably going to go with a 70-30% split, that 70% that Brodie Lee is likely to be the Exalted One, and Matt Hardy is that 30% he could also likely be the Exalted One. Now, the Exalted One's identity has been causing quite a bit of buzz online, but hasn't actually, if you think about it, been featured really prominently on Dynamite since the Dark Order had that god-awful closing segment last year on Dynamite. Even with the last pay-per-view at Revolution, the whole Exalted One, was it Christopher Daniels thing, was on the pre-show. It wasn't even featured on the pay-per-view. Now, hopefully, if we do get the reveal of the Exalted One as a Matt Hardy or as a Brodie Lee, then the Dark Order can be turned around as to be honest, apart from their original vignettes, which I really, really did enjoy. I thought they were different. I thought they were interesting. I thought they were really well put together, and it had me more interested in the faction than I'd ever been. Ever since then, I think the Dark Order's left a lot to be desired, but I do think the potential is there. I do think there is a potential there to do something really different, really off the wall, have some really interesting vignettes, really interesting segments. The matches, they're okay. I like Stu Grayson as a performer. I think he's really underrated. Evil Uno's done okay in carrying the load on the mic skills at the moment, but there needs to be more. And I do believe that with the right leader, there is the potential there to be more. So with a hot commodity like Brodie Lee, that could certainly elevate them, but I would hope that Brodie Lee himself gets elevated to the main event scene because that's where he belongs. Or with the like of a Matt Hardy, who has social media absolutely buzzing at the moment as to where he will land next, and without any shadow of a doubt will reinvent himself regardless of where he goes, with a character that could be potentially even more out there than the broken Matt Hardy and the broken universe we saw before. He could certainly get a lot of people talking about the Dark Order and elevate the talent in the Dark Order if he was revealed to be the Exalted One. So I'm interested to see who the reveal is, but at this point I think it will indeed be a Brodie Lee. I just don't, like I said, with the initial plans of being in Rochester, New York, I don't, unless the setting of Rochester, New York was a red herring, I don't see who else it could be at this point. I don't think it will be anyone that's already on the AEW roster. With this sort of thing, they're kind of implying that it's an outside person that's driving the Dark Order since the beginning. So I don't think we're going to see anyone existing on the AEW roster be revealed as the Exalted One. I know there was some thoughts that it could be Hangman Adam Page. I don't think it will be. I think if anything at this point, the way that the Dark Order has been treated on AEW television, that Hangman Adam Page would actually be a bit of a step down, because Hangman Adam Page has just been on fire recently since Hangman changed his character, got that little bit of a darker edge to his character, and had the beer drinking, distance himself from the elite sort of thing. I think some people thought that was the beginning of a heel turn, but if anything, that's been the start of a massive babyface push for Hangman Adam Page. And I think going to the Dark Order would just be the wrong move. I think Hangman Page in this new character that he's developing is absolute money, and I think that would be leaving quite a lot of money on the table if he was to be revealed as the Exalted One. So I don't think it will be Hangman Adam Page. I see some people also suggesting that it could be Christopher Daniels as well, and I don't think it will. Now, obviously, we had the reveal at AEW Revolution, if you want to call it a reveal, that Christopher Daniels wasn't the Exalted One of the Dark Order, so I don't expect that to be a red herring or trying to put us off or anything like that. And like I said, I think that would almost be a bit of a letdown, to be honest. I don't think at this stage in his career Christopher Daniels should necessarily be put into that spot. Obviously, he was at one point being considered to be the higher power, wasn't he, with the ministry back in the day, or the corporate ministry back in the day. So they could tell that, but that's probably paying too much attention to WWE and WWE's history at this point. AEW needs to create their own history, and I think a reveal of a Matt Hardy or a Brodie Lee would be the perfect example of AEW creating their own history with their own ideas and their own factions. So I don't expect it to be Christopher Daniels. I stated on social media as well that I'm not too keen on Daniels still feuding with the Dark Order and SCU. I was happy with the story that they told on heading into Revolution and on the pre-show at Revolution. I think if you do have a Brodie Lee or a Matt Hardy be revealed as the Exalted One, then the Dark Order need to start moving up the card, because certainly if it's Brodie Lee's case, he definitely needs to be in the upper tier of the card, because he's a fantastic worker and he's always deserved that opportunity to be in the World Championship picture. He could definitely be a huge talent for AEW. It's a huge get if he does sign, when he does sign. But like I said, I think at this point it's looking more and more likely that we're going to see Brodie Lee be the Exalted One, even though in my opinion I would prefer it to be a Matt Hardy. I just think it's a better fit. I really do, and I think Matt Hardy would make me care more about the faction as a whole, whereas if Brodie Lee's revealed to be the Exalted One, I still only care really about Brodie Lee in that position, not necessarily as much as the whole faction. And I think in terms of the vignettes, if it is Matt Hardy that's revealed to be the Exalted One, we've seen what great vignettes and what great promos and segments that Matt Hardy can do. I mean, just look at his Free to Delete series on YouTube. That's just him and his wife creating that from the creative point of view and literally the production point of view. So imagine what type of segments and vignettes they could do with the Dark Order with AEW's production budget behind it. That could be something even better. So that would certainly be something that I think, again, would be better suited to Matt Hardy. But like I said, at this point, it's becoming more and more likely that Brodie Lee is going to be revealed as the Exalted One, and it would certainly be interesting to see. I don't want to write it off completely, and I think Brodie Lee does have the potential to move up the card, and he would certainly help elevate the likes of Evil Uno and Stu Grayson, and heck, even who knows, they're looking like they're going to be integrating trios championships into AEW at some point in the near future. Perhaps Brodie Lee, Stu Grayson, and Evil Uno become the first trios champion. Now, personally, I would prefer that to be Death Triangle, but that's probably all for a different video. But what do you think? It's not just about my opinion, as always, it's about your opinion too. That's the most important thing on this channel. It's content made by wrestling fans for wrestling fans, so it's all about the fans' opinion here. So who do you think the Exalted One is? Do you think it's Brodie Lee? Do you think it's Matt Hardy? Or do you think it's someone else? Who do you think would be the best fit to be the Exalted One? Would Brodie Lee fit, or would Matt Hardy be the better fit? The fact that it was going to be in Rochester, New York, now it's in Jacksonville, Florida, has that changed things? Will we still see a reveal of the Exalted One? Who knows? What are your opinions on the Dark Order? Do they need to improve, or are you happy the way they are? Let me know in the comment section below. Don't forget to like, share and subscribe. You can subscribe by clicking the bottom right hand corner, and make sure, I think we're 21 subscribers away at this point from 100. That's the next big goal, so help us get to 100 subscribers. Tell your friends if they haven't subscribed already, and I'll speak with you again very, very soon. Hey guys, thank you for watching, listening, streaming, or however you come across this video today. Be sure to click on the video on the right there to watch our next video, or click at the bottom there to subscribe, or the bottom right hand corner. Thank you very much, and I'll speak to you again very soon.